Hello and welcome back to the NFL Quick Talk Podcast. As always, you can find the show on YouTube and Spotify. Subscribe and follow. And we are trying to hit 100 subscribers on YouTube. So if you haven't already, please subscribe. And triple digits is a huge milestone for the channel. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, please go ahead and do that. And we're going to be previewing the top 5 best games going into week 3 and giving a prediction and my thoughts on the games as a whole. So let's jump right into it. At number 5, we have the Bills going to Washington to play the Commanders. The Bills are 1-1, and the Commanders are a surprise 2-0. The Bills are favored by 6 points. And my question really for the Commanders on their side of the ball is what will Sam Howell do for an encore after beating the Broncos? His team scored 7 touchdowns, put up 35 points, and he threw for over 300 yards. So what will he do against a way better Bills defense? And how can he really try and prove to the league that he is a legitimate starter? One win is great, but you got to really stack wins here. And that leads into my point for the Bills. Can the Bills stack wins? You know, you had a very ugly loss against the New York Jets in week 1, and then you go out and you beat the crap out of the Raiders by 28 points, 4 touchdowns. So you got to be able to go out and stack wins against teams that you really should beat, and the Commanders is a team that you really should beat. So for the Bills, you really got to be able to go in there and win this one, and I think that they recognize that importance, and I have them winning by 10 points. At number 4, we have the Saints visiting the Green Bay Packers. The Packers are favored by 1, so it is essentially a 50-50 game, a toss-up game. And on the Saints side, the Saints wins have not been very convincing at all. 2 very inferior teams roster-wise. They won by 1 point to the Titans, and they won by 3 points to the Panthers. So when you get a solid team, you're going to Green Bay to play a very solid Packers team. Can they go out and get a win? I'm not sure that they can, because of the fact that the Packers have played surprisingly well on offense, surprisingly efficiently, and their defense has been shaky at times, which leads me into my point for the Packers. Let me just finish this. Let me finish on the Saints. So I think that the Saints, if they go to 3-0 here versus the Packers, I think it's a very good sign. But they're really going to have to earn it because they have not looked like world beaters. Now, going back to the Packers, their defense has to be able to stop the run in this game. The Saints are most likely going to try and run the ball a fair amount, even though they will pass a lot, but I feel like the Saints really have to run the ball to win this game. And can the Packers' run defense, especially, really the defense as a whole, but the run defense especially, can they really lock it down? Because, you had Bijan Robinson. I know he's a very good talent and all that. Last week against the Falcons, but he ran for $125 on you. And I think Desmond Ridder ran for a touchdown or 2. So can you lock it down on the defensive front, that front 7, and prevent a Saints running back from going over 100 yards? And I think you could be able to do that. Their Saints are without Alvin Kamara for this game. They're going to get him back next week, which is going to be big for them because they'll be able to run the ball more efficiently. But I think that they'll definitely be able to lock up the Saints running backs, which turns the Saints one-dimensional. And I see the Packers winning this game by 3 points. I still think that the Saints will be able to put up some pretty fast points with, that connection between Derek Carr and Chris Olave. They've been really special so far. But yeah, that's what I think about this game. At number 3, we have the Chargers at the Vikings. And this game, these are 2 teams that really are playoff caliber teams. There's some debate with the Vikings, but if you think back to when I had the predictions at the beginning of the season, I had the Vikings sneaking in as the 7th seed. And if you don't agree that they're even a playoff team, they're definitely in the conversation for a very long time. They have always been competing. They've always had good quarterback play. They've always had great players. So, if they aren't near playoffs, they're definitely in the playoff mix, playoff race. And they're both 0-2 to start the season, both the Vikings and the Chargers. The Chargers definitely have one of the more complete rosters in the NFL, but they're 0-2 to start the season as well. Minnesota is favored by 1 point in this game, just like Saints Packers, so it's more like a 50-50. And really, whoever loses this game, a loss here really does hurt. Two losses, okay, you can rebound. Like the Bengals, they've lost 2 games. I think that they'll rebound and find a way to finish the season decently. But really, can the Chargers, especially because I think the Chargers are the better team, if they lose this game, this goes for both teams, but really more for the Chargers. If they lose this game, they are definitely in trouble for the playoffs. You know what? I take that back. It's really more about the Vikings because the Vikings, are more of a fringe playoff team than the Chargers are. Because the Vikings, because Green Bay has started out and looking pretty decent, because the Lions went into Arrowhead, and they beat Kansas City. I mean, the Bears are a little bit of a dumpster fire right now, I'll admit, but I mean, the Vikings are in a division where it's looking a little bit competitive here, and they really dropping to 0-3 is going to hurt them drastically for the playoffs. 0-2 you can come back from, but once you start going 0-3, 0-4, 0-5, I think by 5 games you should have at least 1 or 2 wins. You should have at least 2 wins by week 5 in order to past week 5, I should say. I think if you want to stay in playoff contention, 2-3 to start the season really is the bare minimum, I would say. So this is a pivotal game for both teams. This is the earliest time for a must win, but I really think that it calls for it because of the fact that both these teams are really in a tough division. The Chargers with the AFC West, obviously, that's very tough. And the Vikings now in the NFC North, where it has gotten surprisingly competitive with the emergence of the Packers and the Lions. And just as a side note for the Chargers, Austin Eckler, their star running back, is out again, and that's really gonna miss him. So really, who can win this game and stay in playoff contention? In my opinion, it doesn't mean if they lose, they're just out for good. It's really just like it will really hurt them if they lose this game. But I do have the Chargers winning this game by 2 to 4 points, so around the 3 point range. At number 2, we have the Atlanta Falcons going to Detroit to play the Lions. The Lions are 3 point favorites. And for the Falcons, their rushing attack will have to play a big factor in this game because, had Bijan Robinson going for a buck 25, as I stated with the Packers and them. But I do think that to win this game, you really do have to manage the clock because the Lions' offense is electric and explosive, especially when you have Jared Goff throwing to Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's a borderline elite player. To some people, in my opinion, St. Brown is definitely an elite player, one of the top wide receivers in the league by far. And once they get going with gas, they can't really be stopped. Teams have tried. They put up tons of points, and I think that in order to keep that Lions offense off the field, that should be the main priority of the Falcons offense. Falcons offense should take a ton of clock, really game manage the situation, make sure that you're given plenty of touches, 20 plus touches to Tyler Algier, to Bijan Robinson, and make sure that you're mixing it up, calling different plays, running inside the tackles, running outside the tackles, and doing whatever it takes to keep that rushing game alive so that you can manage the clock well. For the Lions, it is about stopping that rushing attack. Their defensive line is pretty weak. Their linebackers are very young. Players like Jack Campbell, Lucas Van Ness, one of those two. Can't remember which one's on the team. And I forgot there. But either way, you got young linebackers and a pretty weak defensive line, except for Aiden Hutchinson, who's pretty good. But really, how are you going to play that as well? And also, mainly for the Lions, your offense has to be out there, and when they're out there, if the Falcons do go ahead and take what I say and run the ball and control time of possession, once the Lions get those drives, you got to make those drives capitalize. You got to capitalize on those drives. You got to be able to go down and score when you have the opportunity. For this game, I have the Falcons winning by 6 in an upset in Detroit. And my number one game of the week, a little bit of a surprise, but I have the Eagles at the Buccaneers, both 2-0 teams. Philadelphia is favored by 5 points. And I think that this is the best game of the week because the Buccaneers have looked really, really good. I know it was against a weak Vikings defense. I know it was against an exploding Bears team, but no one expected them to go out and play good. No one expected Baker Mayfield of all people to go out and look efficient, look like he belongs in the NFL, look like he actually is a good quarterback, and that's what I see out of Baker Mayfield for the time being. Now, this Eagles defense is going to provide some challenges, and I think that the Eagles offense is going to overwhelm the Bucks defense, but I think this will be a very entertaining game on Monday night. I think that there's going to be a fair amount of points scored. I think that the Eagles win by a touchdown, anywhere from 7 to 10 points, but I think the Bucks are going to keep it close, and I think that they're going to show enough so that you could say, "Huh, I think that they're going to be a team that contends for a playoff spot." And I did not think that coming into the year. I full well admit I did not think that, and I am darn sure now that the Bucks are going to be sticking around uh past where I had them sticking around for a while. Thank you guys so much for watching all the way through. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We're trying to hit 100, and it's the best way to get notified when I put out content like the weekly reactions and the weekly top 5 games of Friday 5. And if you haven't already, please go and follow us on the Spotify account. Also, if you're on Spotify, go and follow us on YouTube. And I will see you guys in the next one.